Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Play Some Board Games. Oh, that's right. I said play some board games. That's what we're talking about this evening at Play Some Video Games, which is the only gaming podcast playable with little collectible miniatures and 40-sided die. And the little collectible miniatures you have to paint yourself, which in our case is a good thing because you know how Coach Mo feels about pants. This way you can at least paint pants on your Coach Mo little figurine. But I digress. With us this evening, of course, is your host, Kevin. Kyle is here as well. How are we doing tonight, Kyle?
Quite well. Happy to be here with you, sir.
Yay! And, drumroll, ladies and gentlemen, we have a newcomer. Everybody welcome Josh to the podcast. Josh, how are we doing?
Very good, thank you.
So, you might have seen Josh posted a couple articles on the website already, but this is his first attempt at getting inside your ear holes, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about board games. And these two guys are by far the most qualified ones on the staff to discuss these things. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, as always, we like to catch you up with what we've been up to. So, Kyle, sir, what have you been playing? What have you been up to?
Well, it's been a busy, week or so since we last spoke. From a video game perspective, that darn Overwatch keeps pulling me back in. And I want to get away from it because I have all these other things to play. But darn it, that fickle mistress just keeps pulling me back and pulling me back. Their Halloween event right now has been a lot of fun. A lot of the stuff that they have going on for that is a good time. So still, tempted into Overwatch now and then again. But when I'm not playing that, still playing Thumper, which on PSVR is absolutely exceptional. I love a good rhythm game, and this game delivers everything it needs to in spades. It's a really good time. I haven't tried it in the non-VR mode, so I don't know if it's quite the same. But man, in VR, that game is absolutely incredible. Another VR game that I've been playing is this nifty little game called Tethered. This is something you'll be seeing a review from me soon on the site. I posted an initial impressions article already. This game is spectacular. This game is really, really good. I'm really excited to be playing it. It's something I've been kind of keeping my eye on since it was first released, since it was first announced over summer, with a cute little teaser trailer, and you have these little guys called Peeps, who you're trying to help them take back their world, and their world is an archipelago of 13 different islands. And it's basically a real-time strategy game, which I'm really bad at. I've always been horrible at real-time strategy games. And this one is no exception. No matter how cute it is, I'm still really bad at it. But you're basically helping them build their island back so that you can help them collect enough spirit energy so that they can unlock the spirit for their island to kind of win it back from evil, which is taken over the island. And like I said, I'm having a great time with this game. It is pretty exceptional. It's, is it the quote-unquote killer app that everyone needs to buy VR for? No. But if you have PSVR, I really highly encourage you to take a look at it. Or if you're on the fence about getting one, this is one of those games that might sway you because it's pretty meaty. Like I said, there's 13 islands. The last one that I played took me about, 40 minutes to beat. So there's a solid 8, 9, 10 hours worth of content in this game where people talk about all these VR experiences being, 40 minutes to an hour. This one's pretty beefy. So look for a full review on that soon. But Tethered, really, really enjoying it. Still plugging away.
Before you jump over, Kyle, do you know how much that's going to be retailing for?
Oh, man, I wish I did. We did get a review code for it, so I'm not certain. Okay. I feel like it's probably in that $19.99 range. But I honestly don't know. I'm sure it says on the PlayStation blog or on the PlayStation Store. But I'm not certain.
I mean, either way, like you said, the length of time that game seems to be makes it definitely seem worth the value. I mean, even more than $20 compared to some of these other quote-unquote experiences you're seeing. So, yeah, I saw the trailer you posted and then the different pictures and stuff. It looks really interesting. By far, I think, other than the Batman one, I think to be the most interesting one I've seen that I'd be like, oh, I could totally see myself playing that one. So, it's good to hear you're enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's been great. And then on my Vita, still plugging away at Dragon Quest Builders, and this game is everything I really wanted it to be. It's pretty spectacular. I've enjoyed Minecraft in the past, just wished for some more direction, and this gives it to you definitely. So it's been interesting, some smaller games that I wasn't expecting between Dragon Quest Builders and Tethered, and actually really even Thumper. When I think of my, top 5, top 10 games of the year, these games that you maybe haven't heard of before or weren't really big, they're making their name be heard and definitely fighting for some spots there. So I'm pretty impressed with what I've played at the end of this year, even if they aren't some really big AAA exclusives. It's still been definitely a good fall thus far. On the board game side, still playing through that Mice and Mystics campaign with the wife. We're slowly working our way there. Actually picked up the next expansion, so we're ready for that once we complete the campaign in the main box. And then also thanks to Josh's, gentle prodding, finally picked up Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, which is a cooperative deck building game. So if you're a fan of Harry Potter, definitely can recommend this game, even if you're not into the hobby board game or designer board game market. It definitely is a very nice place to enter. It walks you through the 7 different stories, and the rules in book 1 or game 1 are far simpler than they are once you get to book 4, book 5, book 6. So it's really a nice entry point because it will teach you a lot of the mechanics you'll see in a lot of other deck building games, but it introduces them to you slowly over time. Actually, really thematic. It's a fun little game, so enjoying that one pretty well just through the first 3 books right now, but having enjoyed my time with that as well. So that's what I've been up to, Kevin.
Awesome, good to hear, man. I picked up that game as well, the Harry Potter game, but have not gotten a chance to crack it open. It seems like every weekend I got currently like 15 things going on, so I haven't been able to sit down with the wife and kids, but I am looking forward to it too. Also picked it up per recommendation of Josh. Let's see, for me, still playing Paper Mario Color Splash a bit, still having fun with it, just really taking my time with it and kind of enjoying it, knowing that the future of my Wii U is looking very, very bleak, as we discussed on last week's podcast. So I'm enjoying my final probably playthrough and anything on the Wii U. Still picking away at Animal Crossing. The fall/Halloween events are starting to ramp up. So this is the season basically from fall through New Year's that makes, in my opinion, makes Animal Crossing the most fun as they celebrate the different holidays and the seasons change and everything. So picked that back up and playing that. Let's see. Still playing Pirate Pop Plus as well. That's a tongue twister to say really quick, but the review for that should actually be up already as you're hearing this. I'm doing the final steps tonight. Still having a lot of fun with that. It is very, very much a Game Boy game, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean straight up 1980s Game Boy game, and it's designed perfectly. It's not like the hippie hipster, trendy, 8-bit retro games, quote unquote, where they just kind of are inspired by it. This is from like bottom to top. I could have played this back then and would have enjoyed it, and I still am enjoying it right now because it's reminding me of those days where, games were very simple and they just push you to get better and better each time. So having a lot of fun with that. So check out my full review for that. And then lastly, right before we started, I finally got around to trying the Outlast 2 demo, and I will say it looks very promising in my mind. I was a fan of the original Outlast. This seems to improve on the mechanics here. Still very much puts you in the atmosphere of pure panic, and the tension is really what gets you in that game. So this atmosphere is a little bit different. You're in the woods and / farmland. So there was a scene towards the end of the demo where you're kind of crawling through the cornfields while whoever they are looking for you, and you just see the flashlights, and it's creepy. I mean, it definitely hooks you right in. There was a couple attempted jump scares. One got me pretty good, so that was fun. But yeah, looking forward to playing the full game when it comes out, I think. But this one definitely seems to have taken the formula from the first one and just ramped up the fear and the tension and worked on the game mechanics a little bit. And it also visually looks a lot better too. So I'll look at the full game and see if it all holds up or if it's just a nice polished demo. We shall see.
Hey, Kevin,
but that's it for me. Yeah,
hey, Kevin, how long is that demo?
It's really short. It's maybe 10, 15 minutes, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super short, and it's very much a controlled demo. There's not really much wandering around you can do. It's kind of just guides you from point A to point B to the end of the demo. So I'm not even sure if that's going to be something included in the actual game. Just because of the way it is. It doesn't seem to flow like, oh, this is part of a level. It just kind of seems to be, without getting into any spoilers, seems to be bits and pieces of different things, I think, is what they were going for, to give you a feel of what it's going to be like. But yeah, it's really short, so if you download it, I think you have till Halloween to download it, and then it was like a limited time demo. But once you download it, much like PT, you can re-download it and use it. Well, actually, PT, you can't re-download it, but you'll be able to re-download and play the Outlast 2 demo if you picked it up originally and added it to your library. It's really short, like I say, but it's definitely worth a try if you were interested in the game at all. So check that out. And that wraps it up for me. So, Josh, before you get into what you've been playing, every new member to the team, if you will, has to share their favorite video game memory. So why don't you start off with that, and then we'll get into what you've been up to.
All right. It's tough. I was thinking about it today at work because I have two that kind of stick out. The first one was when we got a Nintendo when I was however many years old. I was 5, 6 years old. I very vividly remember my mother actually waking me up at midnight because she finally got to the last Bowser, and she wanted me to see her defeat it. So my parents kind of ushered me into the realm of video games, if you will, which I thought was really cool. But the big one that I think defined it for me was going through junior high. I used to have my best friend Eric, and I would get together and have sleepovers at his house and play through Final Fantasy 7 and 8. And I would be the strategy guide guy. I would read the book to him, and he would do everything. So we make sure we got Knights of the Round and all these all the epic ultimate weapons and all that. But for me, my biggest moment was when I picked up Final Fantasy X and played it through myself, by myself, no guide, no friends with me. I wouldn't call myself a traditional RPG guy, but that was a big moment for me. Starting and finishing a game, putting in those 99 plus hours, getting every weapon, and really owning that myself. It's a really big moment for me. So it's probably my favorite memory that I have for gaming.
Cool. All right. So then, why don't you tell us what you've been up to? What have you been playing?
Well, I wanted to start by saying because of the podcast, I went out and I bought Animal Crossing for my wife, who actually has been home sick for the past 2 days, and she is now totally addicted to that game. So play some video games definitely helped out the loving, affectionate wife over here. So I can get some slack from taking time away from us to play some video games myself. But for me, we both just got new 3DSs ourselves, traded in our old 3DSs. So I picked up Hyrule Warriors based on listening to you and Donnie talk about it, and I'm loving it. It looks fantastic. Plays great. I love the new addition to that. I don't even know what it's called on the new 3DS. It's like that circle button at the top of the buttons, like a C stick or something.
Yeah, the little nub. Yeah,
nub.
C stick officially. We kind of
Yeah,
we refer to it as the nub.
Yeah, the nub. So I think that's a great addition. It gives you a lot of a good way to look around that world because it's kind of huge. Um, Forza Horizon 3. Sorry, I've still been picking it up as much as I can between the games I'm reviewing. I absolutely love it. I haven't really been a big fan of racing games since the Burnout series, so it's a nice change to my game play style. And then I'm really hoping I don't butcher the name because I have to do an RDQ for it. But Hopiko is a game I've been playing that hopefully my review will be out for tomorrow. I'm really enjoying it a lot. It's a very fun, challenging speed game, kind of like Super Meat Boy, if you ever played it, where it has that like risk reward kind of difficulty level, where if you want to go fast, you just have to be prepared to do it all over again multiple times, which can be a little frustrating. But I'm enjoying it. And then the last thing is what you guys both talked about was the Harry Potter Battle for Hogwarts board game, which is kind of great in general. So it's a great way to get into what they call deck building games, and it's very at a very intermediate level, and the difficulty just ramps up the further you go. And my wife and I have been playing it together. The cool thing I think about this game is it's really built for 4 players, even though you can play 2 to 4 players. That difficulty level doesn't change if you have 2 players as opposed to 4. So it's a nice, solid challenge to get through, which I like. Keeps you coming back, and it has that legacy game element too, where you're kind of unlocking different parts of the game as you go through. So I really enjoy it a lot, and we don't have enough time to play it, in my opinion. So we try to get through it as much as we can. But that's what I've been playing so far.
All right. Well, thanks, Josh, and welcome aboard. And we are glad to have you here to discuss all things spooky board games, if you will. So let's move on into the main topic of this evening then. which, as I mentioned, is going to be spooky board games. Our specialists here, Kyle and Josh, have compiled a list of some board games you guys can use in your annual, normally in most cases, weekly game nights, with some friends to get into the fall/Halloween spirit. So, yeah, let's just throw it to Kyle then to kick it all off and give us your first pick for spooky board games.
So my first pick for spooky board games is, I don't know if it's super spooky per se, but apparently, and I don't watch it, I've only read the comics after the debut of the new season of The Walking Dead. Maybe it is kind of spooky now. But that game is Dead of Winter. It's a semi-cooperative board game for 2 to 5 players. Retails for, in the neighborhood of $60, but you can typically get it for about $40 to $45. So Dead of Winter, the reason I like this game is that it really oozes with a lot of theme. Basically, what you're doing is you're leading a faction of survivors that are part of a weakened colony of survivors during the zombie apocalypse, which sounds pretty great, right? So everyone's working towards a common victory condition at the table for the most part. So there's this one victory condition that's laid out that may say survive a certain number of rounds, or stockpile a certain amount of resources, or deplete a certain number of locations of all their search piles, something like that. But in order for you to achieve victory, you have to meet that common victory condition as well as your personal victory condition, which nobody else in the game knows. So your personal victory condition might say like, hey, you have to complete the main objective and have 3 food in your hand, or have 3 medicine, or have a certain number of barriers built on the board, or something like that. Now, to throw one more thing into the mix, it's possible that someone in the group is a traitor, and that their victory condition is, for them to win, nobody else can meet the main condition, so everyone else has to fail, and then you have to meet some special condition. So the reason I like the game is because everyone can win, no one can win, one person can win, 2 people can win. Like, there's this huge conglomeration of things that can happen. And you really start to learn what kind of friends you have, because if you get to the situation where maybe it turns out that you're lucky, that you're all cooperating and you're all trying to win the game, but then all of a sudden somebody in your group realizes, oh man, I can really help us get to that common victory condition, but I know I can't get my personal victory condition. Are they still going to help you with the game or not? Because are they going to really feel like a winner? So this is one of the reasons I like the game, is it just oozes theme, and they have a really interesting mechanic in it that really hasn't been duplicated in another game yet. And that's what they call the crossroads mechanic. And basically what the crossroads mechanic is if I'm playing my turn, the player next to me has drawn a crossroads card. And if at any point during my turn I meet the condition on that crossroad card, but I don't know what it is, it triggers some event to happen. And this is constantly happening and rotating throughout the game, so every time someone else new starts their turn, another crossroads card is drawn, and you might see, and something drastically might change what's happening in the game. So it's one of my favorite games. Came out, I believe, 2 years ago now. Was one of the big games of 2014. I still play it regularly. They had a big box expansion called The Long Night, which is out now, which you can combine with the base game or play on its own. But if you're looking for something that's a little spooky, super thematic, and you can, one of the characters you can be in it is a dog, so that's awesome. I definitely highly recommend Dead of Winter.
Yeah, if you guys only knew Kyle's affinity for puppies, if you will, then you'd get that. You could be a dog joke much, much better.
They added a monkey into the expansion.
Yes, they did. It's not as cool as a dog, but it's still cool.
My favorite part of that, though,
fair
is
enough, then.
If you get accused of being the traitor and you get sent out, you start working against people, and you can decide to be vindictive or try to help them out. And I got voted out recently by everyone because they always assume I'm the traitor when we start. So I just decided to, start making noise in every site and bringing as many zombies on them as possible. It was pretty great.
Yeah, I've been bummed. Never when I've played the game have I been the traitor. Ever. Not one time. So I keep thinking maybe one of these days it's going to happen, but I always want everyone to win, so even if I was a traitor, I probably wouldn't be very good at it. So
I'll say you're too much of a nice guy to do that kind of stuff, Kyle.
I can be vindictive in board games, but it can be tough for me to be it.
That's a long game, too.
Fair enough. All right, Josh, why don't you give us...
Oh, good. Sorry.
That's true. No, that's fine. I was gonna throw it to you anyway to give your first pick.
All right. So my first pick is a game called Betrayal at House on the Hill. It's a second edition, so that's the one you can find now. It's I'm trying to. I want to make sure I set this up correctly. So it's a cooperative game. Uh, Basically, the idea of it is you and up to 5 other players walk into this old spooky house, and the way that you play it is you pick a character. Each tile has 2 sides, so uh, you have character traits that are different for each character. And you'll have things like speed, intelligence, um, might, and all these kind of different checks you'll have to make when you're exploring this house. So what you do is you start on a tile, and as you move forward on the tile, you can explore a room and you draw a room tile. So once you look at that tile, it'll tell you maybe it's a cellar or maybe it's a creaky hallway. And these things will pop up called omens. And as you get an omen, it has a little picture of a raven on it. You have to move the omen tracker up, and every time you do that, you roll a die or a 6 die. And what happens is once the omen is revealed, you go from a cooperative game to a one versus everyone game. So the game will give you instructions on uh, what to do from where you're going, and basically it assigns a person in your group as the traitor. And in the instruction booklet, there's a separate book for the traitor themselves, and they're instructed to leave the room, go far enough away out of earshot, and that traitor will read a book to themselves, and basically it'll put them in like a villain role. Then everyone else at the table reads the story out loud. It's very thematic, so they kind of put you into this atmosphere. And you get a description on what you need to do to win the game. Sometimes it's to kill the bad guy, but usually it's to escape what that person is trying to do to you. Um, it's tough to describe. It's hard to describe how fun this game is. It's really one of those games where you kind of get together and chat with each other and tease each other. Um, and you kind of like my guy. I pick his name is Ox Bellows, and like you look under his likes and it's like shiny things and football. So he's very strong, but he's super dumb. So if you have to do intelligence checks, you kind of SOL, and that comes into effect in a lot of things where you have to search um, to get an item. You use guns to fight off zombies and vampires, depending on what the bad guy is. Um, and then ultimately, either the group wins or the villain wins. It's pretty exciting. They just released an expansion for it, something like 10 years later, and it was written by the top game writers in the past 10 years. They each write a story that you'll play through during the game. It's pretty great, and it's a good introductory game. It's good for ages 12 and up, according to their website. Um, but it's by Avalon Hill and Wizards of the Coast, so you know it's good quality. And I can't highly recommend it enough.
Yeah. Kyle, did you play this one?
Actually, I never have. I am well aware of it. It's a pretty well known game, but it is not one I've had a chance to dive into.
And you said, Josh, this is a good one for like beginners to board games to play as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where I introduce new people to it. So if we have like my brother comes over with my sister-in-law, and they don't get into like deep games, this is a game you can play for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and people pick it up pretty quickly. And it's one of those games where they'll come back and ask to play it because of how much fun they had.
Cool. Excellent. All right, then Kyle, back to you. What's next on your list?
So number 2 on my list is a hidden movement game, Letters from Whitechapel. So this is a one versus many hidden movement game for 2 to 6 people. And the reason I like this game is one person gets to play Jack the Ripper. And I'm a huge fan of all of the theories and thoughts and stories behind Jack the Ripper. But in this game, if you play Jack the Ripper, your goal is to kill 5 victims before the police can catch you. So the game takes place over 4 nights. So you have one Jack the Ripper, everyone else plays the police, and their goal obviously is to stop Jack before the game's end. So this is a hidden movement game, so the board is a map of Whitechapel, and the game is basically, like I said, divided into 4 nights, and each night kind of has like 2 phases. So without getting too into the weeds, the first half is just kind of a chess match as the police and potential victims are kind of playing chess around the board. So the police are kind of moving around, looking at who the victims might be, trying to get closer, but without, overcommitting one direction, while Jack is kind of moving around, trying to decide who he's going to kill. Once Jack chooses to strike, you kind of reach the second phase of the game, where Jack is trying to race back to his hideout before the police can catch him. If the police fail, the game then progresses to the next night, and the whole thing kind of starts over again. The reason I really like this game, there's another game similar in this style of game called Fury of Dracula that a lot of people tend to like a little bit better. I just prefer this theme a lot more over Fury of Dracula. Both great games. I enjoy both a lot. I just prefer this theme. So if you like hidden movement games or you like the idea of hidden movement games, this is, I think, a really good place to start. I really enjoyed my time with this one. Sometimes people get a little caught up in hidden movement games because they're like, well, whoever's playing the one person, you really got to trust them not to lie. And they have a screen and they're circling where their base is and they're writing down what all their movements are. And my response always to that is, you know what? You need to have better friends then. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, if you're going to have a friend who's going to lie in these situations, like, I don't know what else to tell you. But it's just a really enjoyable game. I think trying to see the group try to outsmart this individual person and who is playing Jack really has a huge effect on the quality of the game. I think it definitely has to be someone who's played the game before, because a new person coming in and trying to play that role can be very, very challenging. But if you have someone who's played it before and can kind of teach it while they're playing Jack and teach the other new people about how to play it, I think it's a great game. That's Letters from Whitechapel.
Excellent. Josh, have you played Letters from Whitechapel?
I haven't. I do have a hidden movement game though called Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space, which sounds very similar. And I agree. You kind of should have better friends if you're worried about people not being honest. But the first time we played the game, I made a mistake in one of my movements, and I won the game not realizing that I moved somewhere I shouldn't have been able to move. Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. I accidentally cheat all the time.
Accidentally, sure.
Well, it's hard. Board games, when you don't have a video game telling you can't do something, sometimes you just do something, and then you're like 20 minutes later, you're like, oh, dang it. I shouldn't have done that.
Yep.
Sure, Kyle. Mm-hmm. We know about you and your heroin problem, so just saying. Josh, it's all you, man. What's next on your list?
Okay, so my next game is a new one, fairly new one for me. It's called Mysterium. I'm going to ask you guys. It's thematic, hugely thematic. It's great for Halloween. One of the cool things is when you open up the box, it actually provides you with a link to their website or to YouTube, and it provides you with a game soundtrack, so you can have it playing in the background while you're doing the game. It kind of sets you in this mood. But I gotta ask you, have you guys heard of or played a game called Dixit?
Yes.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Dixit is a game where you get a box full of cards with art on them, and one player looks at a card and says a phrase, and everyone has to try to match one of their pictures out of a hand of 7, say, to match that person's phrase, and they have to try to guess like the most accurate. I won't get into the whole game because it's not that important, but in this game Mysterium, it's very similar to Dixit, where one of you plays a ghost. It's 2 to 7 players, which I think is great when you have large groups of people over. And it's pretty low age range. Like, you can get kids 8 to 10 years old starting this, all the way up to adults, and it's only about an hour playtime if you're doing it right. But it's a mix of Dixit meets Clue, in a very interesting way. So someone plays a ghost who died in this castle or manor, but the only way they can communicate is through pictures. So you have your investigators are in this house, and what will happen is turn by turn, the ghosts, you start on the bottom and you have to try to guess where a murder happened. Each character has their own murder victim. So if the three of us are playing, I would have a murder victim that I have to guess what room they died in, who killed them, and what weapon they used. You know, a la like Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick kind of thing. And each of us will have our own thing, but the ghosts can only tell us who did it by giving us picture cards. So if you have a room, say it's a billiards room, and you see a pool cue and some pool balls, they have to try to find in their hand of, I want to say 7 cards, which card matches that room the best. They can give you all the cards in their hand if they wanted to. So if they think each picture would lead you to guess that, they can give you 7 cards, or they can give you 1 card. And they do this for every player. And if you get the first one correct, you move forward to the next stage, which would be guessing the character that killed you. And the only way you can win is if everyone playing gets to the final stage, where then the ghost will give you one specific person, one specific room, and one specific weapon that was used to kill whoever. And what they do is, if you do secret ballot voting, if you get a certain amount correct, you'll be able to see one of the 3 cards. If you get a certain amount higher, you can see 2 out of the 3 cards, etc. And then you have to vote after you see your cards. So say Kevin could only see 1 card. He has to guess who he thinks the killer is based on that 1 card. But if Kyle has 3 cards, he gets to see all of them and then make his best guess. And we only win if everyone guesses that character correctly. Otherwise, everyone loses. The ghost is left to haunt the house again until the next time you play or whatever. The next year you play the game. It's pretty great. The first time we played it was a little bit of a mess because people weren't paying attention and people were confused and people were drinking. So it's probably a good, nice, sober game to play.
So then it's off my list. Sorry.
Well,
but
you can have fun and not be sober, but your friends, if you're playing with 7 people, they might hate you.
Yeah, it's true. So Kyle, have you picked this one up yet?
So Mysterium's a great game. The only downfall I see to it is that if you don't know who the person who's the ghost very well, it can be very challenging to try to figure out like what they think is going to be the important thing or how they give clues. Sure. So the better you know that person, I think it can help facilitate a little bit about what might be important. Because sometimes when I haven't known, when I've been over with friends playing or groups of people where I get invited to a friend's house and there are other people there, sometimes I'm just like, I don't know at all how you got to the clues that you did. So it's a great game, definitely. I definitely would be something I would recommend, but that can be a little challenging sometimes. Is that if you don't know the clue giver, it can be a little challenging sometimes.
Yeah, especially
that sounds really. In all honesty, it sounds. Well, yeah, that's always you always get somebody who doesn't want to be like, I just want to play, but I want to play on my terms, and that's kind of iffy. But it does sound really cool. I think I might pick that one up next. Because that definitely sounds something up my alley for sure.
Yeah, the first game we played was with the colorblind kid, given the clues.
Oh,
it was a bit of a distraction,
to say the least. All right, let's throw it back to Kyle then. What's the last one on your top 3 spooky board games?
So the last one, I debated and hemmed and hawed about this one quite a bit, but I decided in the end to pick this game when I could have picked a number of others. But I'm going with Elder Sign, which is a cooperative adventure game for 1 to 8 people. In this game, you work together as a group to gather enough Elder Signs, oddly enough, to seal away an ancient one before it awakens. So this is one of those many Cthulhu games that exist from Fantasy Flight Games, It's in the same universe as Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness, all of those things, and any of those I could have picked for this spot. But I thought this would be kind of a safer entry point for people if they haven't played a ton of games before. This might be a little safer entry than some of those other ones. But you take on the role of different investigators who they all have a little bit different abilities, and they're moving around different rooms of a museum. And these rooms are represented by oversized cards. So basically, you kind of pick the room you want to go to, and you put your person on that card, and then you have to complete the tasks that are on that card. And the way you complete them is by playing a little Yahtzee. And I really like rolling dice, even though I'm bad at it, which doesn't sound like you can be, but I promise you I am. So you just basically have to match the values that are on the task, and if you do, good things happen, and if you don't, bad things happen. And that, in a sense, is the game. You know, if you get to the point where you get enough of those Elder Signs to lock away the Ancient One, you win. If you fail, the Ancient One wakes up, and then you have to fight it, and you can still possibly win at that point, but trying to defeat those Ancient Ones is pretty challenging. So like I said, the reason I enjoy it is that I am actually bad at the game, but I really like rolling dice a lot. I love chucking dice. I love any game that lets me roll a ton of dice, and this game, that is all you're doing is playing Yahtzee a lot. So I'm that person who brings my team down. They always find the easiest tasks for me to complete. So yeah, but like I said, I think it's a little bit of an easier entry point than some of those other games that I had mentioned, from your Arkham Horrors to your Mansions of Madness, which are great games, but if you've never jumped into hobby board games or played them, those might be a little daunting, especially if you get like an Eldritch Horror, which is a bit older and really long and really cumbersome. So yeah, so like I said, Elder Sign, great game, pretty affordable too. Usually you can get it for about $30. Has a couple neat expansions to it that just let you roll even more dice, which is more exciting. So I definitely recommend it though, Elder Sign.
Just roll them dice. Josh, have you played Elder Sign?
I haven't. It's on my short list of games I want to get. I've heard great things about it.
So wait, you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have over 100 board games.
That's a rough
and yet
estimate.
this one is not, you know.
I probably have more.
Jeez. All right, then why don't you give us your final entry in your top three?
Okay, so Kyle was talking about long and cumbersome games, and he mentioned my game I picked. I was hesitant on picking it, but I really love it. So it is a long game, and I picked Mansions of Madness. It's in the same Lovecraftian like storyline as Elder Sign is, and all the Arkham Horror games. And it's going to be tricky because they just released a second edition, which totally turns the game on its head. So I'm going to talk about the base game, and then I'll explain a little bit about the second edition quickly. It's for 2 to 5 players, and it says it's 120-minute playtime. But when you open up the box, you get I want to say between 1 and 5 stories, and it gives you a time on the story. And I'm pretty sure the 5th story, it's like 4-hour playtime. So you really have to be able to invest some time into the game. And it's about a $90 game too, so it's a big investment. But once you open it, you see why it's so expensive. The production quality is huge. They have really nice miniatures in there. And you take on the role of investigators. And one of your friends, we'll say, works as like the dungeon master, the GM of the game, and they're controlling all the bad guys, all the monsters and the villains in this house. And your story will begin depending on what you choose, and it will give you a clear ish objective. You need to go find clue A to try to find clue B to get to clue C before the time reaches midnight, depending on the story. And after everyone takes their turn exploring this house, the bad guy then takes his turn and basically unleashes hell on you, trying to kill you every turn. And you can split up like in a horror movie, or you can stay together. And it really depends on how the team dynamic works in the situations that you're presented with. Sometimes you have to go outside and dig up a grave to find a key while someone else is in the basement trying to to destroy an altar that's summoning demons. Um, it's pretty great. It's pretty exciting. You're always working against the clock, and it's one of those games you never really feel like you're gonna win, which is really why I added it to the horror-ish spooky games, because it really gets you in that mindset where like I don't know if I'm gonna win or lose, which is great. The downside is the setup time is long. If you're the person who's playing the DM, you're setting this board up probably, if you're a good friend, a half an hour before people show up. If not, you start setting up when people get there and everyone just sits there and watches. So that can be less fun. But the second edition they just released, when you get that box, it's still just as big, but they removed a lot of stuff from the game and added a free app. And you can't play the game without a tablet. So you download this app, and now it has voice acting, and they narrate everything from the story. And then you don't need a DM anymore. Everyone can play together because you're inputting into the tablet what room you walked into, and then the tablet plays the bad guy in the scenario. So it's getting a much better reviews than the original. For me, I still prefer, the good old-fashioned everyone does something and contributes. And I kind of like, for these horror kind of games, working against each other at certain points. It kind of gives you a little bit more of a goal that you really want to, get it over on the guy you're playing against, where it's cooperative, competitive kind of game. So I really enjoy that, and they have plenty of expansions out where they add lots of stories. So it's one of those games that, even though you're dropping a lot on it right away, you get a long life out of the series.
Very cool. Kyle, have you played that as well?
Actually, I have not, but the second edition is on my Christmas list right now, so I'm really hoping I can snag that for Christmas. Really quick, Josh, I know for the upgrade from the first edition to the second edition, do you have to buy the full second edition box and then you can just use your stuff, or is there like a separate upgrade that you can purchase?
So you have to buy the second edition, but what they do let you do in the tablet setup, I watched a little tutorial on it because I was just really curious about the game, is they let you click a box that says you have the original, and then it will work in some of the stories that didn't cross over into the new game. So you're still out. Like, it kind of stinks if you spent $100, 3 years ago on this game. Well, it came out in 2011, so I mean, you can probably get your money's worth out of it, but you really don't want to have two, giant boxes just sitting around the house.
Right. Yeah, because I knew there was an upgrade, but I didn't know if it was something separate or if you just had to buy the whole stinking thing again. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure in the future they release the app just so you can do the original game. But as far as I know, for right now, you have to buy the full game, because I don't think I could be wrong. You might be able to go and download the app for free, but from the video I watched, at least, they said that you needed to have the full new box.
Gotcha.
But it's worth looking into, because if you have the original and you can just get the app, that would be great. Because I heard some of the narration, and it's on par with video game voice work, so it sounds really great.
That's pretty cool. So you all listeners out there will be able to check out the full list of Josh and Kyle's recommendations on the website right after you're hearing this in your ears. So we'll have those posted up with some links so you can find out more information and where to purchase these games. But before we close out for this evening, we did get a couple of messages and questions sent in from our listeners. So let's check out the messages.
Message for you, sir.
Our first one comes from Josh Stapleton, also known as CRed_81 on Twitter. He wants to know, do you play any differently against your spouse? My wife won't play certain board games with me if she feels they are too vindictive. So we talked about some of those games where you can kind of really go after somebody, or ones that are more cooperative. So I will throw it to you guys first. Let's go with Kyle.
So here's the funny thing. My wife is cutthroat. Oh my goodness. She makes me not want to play games with her sometimes. Like, man, if there's she always talks about how the only thing I brought to the relationship was losing games. I mean, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, she is cutthroat when it comes to this stuff. So, no, it really doesn't cause me to play any differently because she's usually kicking my butt. Now, I will say we do enjoy very different styles of games. She's a big Euro player. She really likes those really thinky, really heavy, really crunchy games. So, if it was up to her, we'd be playing Terra Mystica and Caverna and things like that every night. Where I'm the guy who likes really thematic stuff and likes throwing dice and playing with cards. So that sometimes is the conflict that we have. But for the most part, no. Like, when it comes to anything, I'm usually the one who's like, hey, can you be nice to me tonight? I'd appreciate it. So no, I don't have that problem at all.
Oh, wow. How about you, Josh? How's it work over there in the household?
Kind of just the opposite. So she hates playing games with me. Well, she says she does. I'm not sure. I don't pull my punches. I don't think that it's fair. It might be different if she didn't take it so hilariously bad. I might not want to do it so much, but she won't play Ticket to Ride with me on our phones anymore because she gets so mad when I beat her. And I'll remind her, like, hey, you beat me once, and she hates that I boast and, like, what's wrong with feeling good when you win? Like, I'm not, like, dancing, but I'll put my hands up and I'll celebrate. So she just, I don't think that it's a specific vindictive game. I think that she just views every game as vindictive with me. I will say that I'm an awful Monopoly player in the best way for me. People will not play Monopoly with me. I don't blame them for that because I am just the worst person you'll ever meet in your life when I'm winning in Monopoly, which is every time I play Monopoly. But otherwise, yeah, I don't play differently against her, but maybe I should because I have so many games I want to play and she just won't play them with me anymore.
So for those of you listening at home, if you weren't aware, Josh is a very humble gentleman. So,
well, the one thing
is what it is.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll throw it to Josh is if they have a game where if she doesn't want to play certain games and maybe they've already tried this, play cooperative games. That is the one thing that my wife and I can always do is we can always, if neither one of us wants to get worked up or frustrated at the other one, we can just play a cooperative game because then we can get mad at the game. So, I always think that those are a really great way if people are worried that someone doesn't like losing or they don't like, quote unquote, hurting the other person or, playing the game the way the game, and most people say is meant to be played. Play those cooperative games because there's a ton of them out there and a lot of them are really, really good. So that is always an excellent way to go.
Yeah, Harry Potter has been really good for our marriage.
Oh, the wand chooses the wizard, Harry. For me at my house, it's pretty much neither one of us pull our punches, so she doesn't get mad at me. She does always say that when I do start winning games, whether it's board games or video games for that matter, that I cheat or I rig the system or I hack the game, whatever the case is. But to be honest, when it comes to the realm of board games, I don't really dominate as much as I do in the digital realm of video games. So we have a lot of fun playing them. We don't really have a ton of experience with the cooperative games. We're starting to get into that kind of stuff now, so I think those would probably work better as well. We'll see with the Harry Potter board game how that works out. But yeah, I don't pull any punches. I don't play any different. She doesn't either. But overall, it's kept pretty fair. There's no celebratory, and nobody's getting angry about winning or losing. So it's all good. It's all games.
There's tons of cooperative games out there, so if you guys get into that Harry Potter and like it, there's definitely plenty more recommendations where that came from.
And next thing you know, I have over 100 board games as well. So our second question comes in from Seth, staff member of PSVG, who's currently on paternity leave, if you will. He is looking for some recommendations for good spooky board games to play with the kids. And he kind of directed it more at me than you guys, so I'll go first. But if you have any suggestions, by all means, jump in. So I have 3. First one I've talked about on the podcast before, and that's One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I've played that with my whole family. We've played with up to, like 8 people, I think, we played with. So we've been able to max out. The game allows you to play with 3 to 10 players. And basically, you take the role of either a villager or a werewolf. And the game will narrate itself so much like Josh did with it. You'll be able to download an app and have a game play through for you, so nobody has to sit out and be the narrator. And you kind of take all turns, and each character has a different skill. So at certain times, you're able to figure out who the wolf might be. But if you're the wolf, you want to kind of divert the attention to somebody else and accuse them of being the wolf. But basically, you play through. The game literally takes like 2 minutes to play around, and you try and figure out who the werewolf is. And if the werewolf gets away, that person wins, and vice versa. Very easy to learn. I mean, I've taught everybody from my younger kids to, my in-laws on how to play. So everybody seems to be able to pick this game up and play. Relatively cheap. It goes for like $15 on Amazon right now. Picked it up on a whim at Target, and we've loved it. We'll sit there and end up playing for like 2 or 3 hours over and over again. My second pick is a game called Broom Service. So this one's for a little bit older. I think it recommends ages 10 and up. I'd say it's pretty fair, depending on the child, of course. Some kids are brighter than others, as we all know. But the basic premise is you're a witch, and you're trying to create and move potions from one end of the board to the other, essentially, and playing different rounds. It's also a card-based game as well. Not as much fun and not really as spooky. It's more whimsical, I think, than anything else. But not a bad game. You can play with 2 to 5 players. Like I said, ages 10 and up they recommend. But not too bad, not too hard. But, it's fun. And then lastly, I'm going to give a classic because you can never, ever, ever go wrong with this game. And there's 100 different iterations. But I'm going with Clue. I'm going old school. So not really spooky per se. But hey, it revolves around a murder. But it gives kids a good chance to learn and use critical thinking and how to narrow down, suspects and objects in rooms. And it gets them learning. I think my youngest daughter learned how to play Clue around 6, maybe. So it was basically as soon as she was old enough to read the cards, she was playing the game, and she's been playing ever since. So they like it. And like I said, you can never go wrong with the classic. You can get Harry Potter versions. I mean, Games of Thrones version. There's a Clue Junior, even if you really want to go with it. But I didn't even go that route. I just made my kids jump right into the original Clue, and they didn't have a hard time with it. So those are my picks. Kyle, do you have anything?
So, I don't have kids, so this is hard for me to do. But the one game I will recommend that I think does work really well with kids is King of Tokyo. Specifically,
oh yes, I've seen that.
Because there is a Halloween expansion for King of Tokyo, which gives you 2 new monsters, Boogie Woogie and Pumpkin Jack, which I actually have this expansion. I'm looking at it right now. In addition, it gives you costume cards for all of the monsters that you can earn as monsters in the game, so you can dress them up as astronauts and things like that. So if you haven't played King of Tokyo, it's a really great game. It works well for kids. It's basically, again, imagine this, throwing dice, playing Yahtzee, but you're trying to become the King of Tokyo. So you just are taking basically turns with your monsters, rolling dice, trying to decide, are you going to try to earn energy? Or are you going to try to attack the monster who's currently in Tokyo? Kind of what are you trying to do? So you get to have these big, cool cardboard standees. And like I said, there's a really cool Halloween expansion that really, if you're looking for spookiness, does it up in a fun, pretty kid-friendly way. Because yeah, these are monsters, but none of them are too scary looking. Plus, you get to give them cool costumes, and that's always a good time.
Yeah, it's fun. I've seen this game a lot, and I've had it in my hands quite a few times, and I end up putting it back down. But it's recommended for ages 8 to 15. A lot cheaper, it looks like, on Amazon than I've seen it in stores. The original King of Tokyo goes for $32, and the Halloween expansion goes for currently $15. So not too bad. I think when I saw it in stores, it was like $40 or $50 at that point. So I'll probably pick that up, Kyle, if you recommend it. So
yeah,
the whole family will play it together. It looks really cool. Every time I've seen it, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to get it, but I can't. Just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger. I'll drop, $40 on Harry Potter, but
well, no, it's great though, and I'll even play it in my game groups with all adults. Yeah, it doesn't work for kids, absolutely, but even as adults, we have a great time with it.
Cool, Josh, you have anything to contribute?
Yeah, actually, King of Tokyo Halloween expansion was one of the ones I was going to talk about.
Nice.
It's great for kids. It's a good introductory game just to board games in general. It's super fun, and there's other expansions you can tag onto that. The cool thing is right now their second printing is out, so they updated all the art from the version I have. So they took out a character, they added a couple different ones in, so they really streamlined it. Now is a good time to get in on the King of Tokyo game. Mysterium, which I talked about earlier, is also good. It's good to get the kids into that because it adds 3 different styles of board games into it, so it's kind of a good jumping off point for future games as well. The only one I was gonna mention it can be considered spooky. You guys familiar with the game Flux?
I mean, I'd rather not be, but I am.
Oh,
Yeah, well, for kids it should be okay, but there's a monster Flux that uses like those Universal Hollywood monsters like Frankenstein, Wolfman, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm not going to try to explain to you what Flux is. You either know what it is or you don't, and you might not want to know. It's a game that you can pick up. Some games last 15 minutes. Sounds like Kyle probably played a game like me where it just keeps going for hours and you kind of want to throw it out the window. So it depends on where you're at, but they're relatively cheap. You're looking at like $10. They have all different styles like Firefly, Flux, Batman, Wizard of Oz, Monty Python. But for this Halloween one, there is a monster Flux that specifically themed at that.
And
yep. Looking at it right now on Amazon, it's ages 8 and up, and it's going for only $10 on Amazon right now. So good deal.
yeah, I don't hate Flux as much as many people do, but if given the choice, I won't. Like, if someone else wants to play it, I'll play it. I would never choose to play it, though.
Yeah, I have a buddy that's just like that. He kind of absolutely hates it, but if there's like 5 people that say yes, he'll play. But under 5, he's a no, solid no.
Fair enough. So I think that wraps up the show for this evening. But before we leave, as always, it's time for some plugs and kind of telling you what we're up to, what you should be checking out, or where you can find us for that matter. So Kyle, we'll throw it to you first.
So yeah, hit me up on Twitter or on the PlayStation Network at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. I'll have a review for Tethered up very, very soon, and a review for another game that I've been working on for a really long time that Kevin keeps bothering me about, so I have to finish it. So expect those from me in either right with this podcast post or shortly thereafter. Otherwise, just trying to slog through all these games that are coming out this wonderful holiday season. So
awesome. And Josh, where can people find you if they're interested in linking up with you?
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Josh Bones. Same on Instagram. Not that I'm posting anything crazy interesting. Obviously, check us out on PlaySomeVideoGames.com. I should have my review of Hopico out in the next, well, it'll probably be up before this post, so should be out by Tuesday morning, and I'll be jumping on my next one. I also, oddly enough, I want to plug Fluxtapost. I just listened to my first episode today, and I think it's kind of like a pretty great companion piece to play some video games because you get your pop culture in there. At least for me, it was great being a big movie buff, and it's done by some guys from the site, so I thought I'd get a little bit of promoting in there.
Absolutely. You can never go wrong with some Flux to love, if you will. So as Josh mentioned, make sure everyone check out PlaySomeVideoGames.com. Like I said, we will list the full list of all the games we discussed this evening, both the top spooky games, and then we'll also throw up the list for the kids as well with some links on where you can pick those up. Be sure to hit the site. Check out Lucas, who, ironically enough, is from Fluxtapost. He posted his first review for the site of Syndrome on PC. It's a survival horror sci-fi type game, clearly inspired by Dead Space, if you will. And also, Donnie posted kind of an editorial about the aftermath of the Nintendo Switch announcement and kind of how the internet has reacted to it as such. And you could hear our reactions to it on the previous episode. So if you heard this one and didn't hear that, what are you doing? Go back and listen to them in order. You can't just jump around. Oh, God. Follow us on Twitter at PSVG. You can email us, as always, at podcast@playsomevideogames.com. Like us on Facebook, YouTube. If you want to follow me on PlayStation Network, come be my friend. We'll play some games together. It's Koch1212, COTCH 1212.
You guys have games on PS4?
And I think...
Sorry, I got to get that in.
Looks like Josh will be joining the Xbox Empire. That's okay. I hear they need some help over there right now, so it's okay.
Haters gonna hate. We're all love on the PSN.
Oh, all right. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for listening. As always this week, continue to tell your friends. It's the only way we stay alive and keep this ship afloat, if you will. And, as always, boys and girls, never stop gaming. Whether it's virtual or now in a board game. Your choice. We don't care. Just keep doing it. Good night.
Thank you for listening to Play Some Video Games, the official podcast.